Hi, folks. Welcome. Thank y'all so much for joining. Um, really glad to have you all here with us today during your lunch hours. Um, as you come in, please make sure that your mic is muted. Feel free to introduce yourself to us in the chat. You could say a quick hello, let us know where you are zooming from today, and we'll be checking the chat and saying hello back. Really glad to have you all here. I'll give us about a minute or two for more folks to join us, and then I'll pass it on to our presenters for this afternoon. Completely forgot to say hello and who I am, but for those of you who are joining us who I haven't had the pleasure of connecting with before, my name is Rich Lean. I'm the director of organizing here at MASSCreative, and I'm very excited to have you all join us for this town hall, this Artivist town hall today, and excited to answer your questions and to share with you all that's been prepared for you.
Hi, AJ. Emily, how cool.
Hey guys.
Hi, friends.
Hello.
Hi,
Glad to see you.
Katie. Great that you're here. Mass Mocha. Yay. Thrilled that you're here. Hi, Igor. Oh my goodness. This
All
is
friends.
awesome. Aaron is driving, but listening. Awesome. Active listening.
Lots of friends in here today.
Yeah, what an awesome group.
Alrighty. All right, y'all. So I'm gonna turn things over to Aaron, Kristen, and Gwendolyn, who is our presenter this afternoon. Um, again, we're so grateful to have you all here. Thank you so much for making the time. We're really excited for the presentation. So please take it away. And Lisa and I are here for support, anything that you need at all.
Well, thank you so much all for joining. I'm going to kick us off and then pass it off to my colleagues. I'm Kristen Vangenhoven, one of the two project managers for this project. And I'm just popping a link into the chat for folks who might want to um, follow along or have a link for the future of where to find our videos of our two pay equity summits and the two reports that we've done. I'm welcoming you on behalf of Aaron and Gwendolyn, who you'll hear from shortly. Aaron and I are the two project leads for the Berkshire Columbia County Pay Equity Project, which started as 6 organizations in 2021 and has grown to 19 arts and culture organizations. We had our first summit and released our first report in 2023. And just this past September, we had a second summit and released our second report. And in the link that I put in the chat is where you can find replays of those. And some of our coalition members are here and you can see them all on the screen. Today, we're going to start with Gwendolyn Van Zandt, CEO of Multicultural Bridge, who is going to share the foundations of this project, which started at an inclusive leadership cohort that the 6 original coalition members were part of. Then you'll hear from Aaron on some data that we've collected over the past 2 years. And then we'll circle back to me to hear next steps, continued commitments, and how you can join us. I'll also facilitate a short question and answer at the end, depending on time. But as we go, please feel free to pop your questions in the chat. If you have any accessibility needs, feel free to message us privately. And I'm going to turn it over to Gwendolyn.
Thank you. All right, Aaron, I think I'm going to share my screen now. Thank you. Hello, everyone. We talked about bios earlier, but just really quickly, you could hear lots of friends here from the Berkshires. I hope you're not seeing my messy screen. Let me see. Can you all see my screen?
Yep, we can see it. Desktop.
Okay, I'm trying to present. There we go. So my name is Gwendolyn Van Sant, CEO and founding director of Bridge, and I'm excited to give this backstory to the Pay Equity Summit that Kristen just talked about. So I'm just going to jump right in and start my timer because I know I can talk a lot about this. So it's good to see all of our friends. Really, at Bridge, we are a culturally specific public health organization that has used the arts to advance justice and equity work since our inception. Part of that is because I'm the founder and I was an art history major. So I really love using the arts to advance the work. And another way is I also like to read a lot of books, and I find that the arts help people get into tap into their bodies more and arts. So a great outcome of all the work that I'm going to talk to you about is we also are funded now by the Bar Foundation in a creative vitality program that was actually influenced by this work that I'll be talking about. And now there are 55 grantees for this new program that came out of the ILC work that I'm going to discuss. This is a little snapshot of all the happy things that we do at Bridge, and just want you to see that for a second. And so pre-COVID, as I said, I've worked with lots of arts institutions in our region in Berkshire County. So this is just a little snapshot of some of our relationships pre-COVID. So this is pre-2019. And then I'm going all the way back to 2016, and with Kristen here, who was then at OAM Theater, and I, the director of Bridge, and we worked with Berkshire Theater Group. We put on Facing Our Truth back in 2013. That was a really powerful event, and it was my first debut on the stage, which was actually getting me way out of its zone. But it was the beginning of really engaging our community in the arts because the people that were acting were community members alongside actors in the area. And then in 2018, I was invited to talk about rural organizing at a public health conference put on by PolicyLink, with equity was the theme. And in that, a lot of the focus was on using the arts. And there were 4,000 people at this conference in Chicago. And every day, Bar Foundation and other foundations were talking about how do they go into communities and use the arts and build up communities for good, not sort of just for a cycle of a grant or a project. I was really motivated by that. I had already been invited to speak with our local foundation about the bar funding that was coming into our county. And so I sent a little postcard to myself that I was going to bring everything that I was so inspired by at the conference to our area. I was going to talk about it in our focus group and make sure that our work was community-centric, rooted in our social justice movement, and center around community. That was the focus of my takeaway. And I wrote this little postcard to myself that came back in the mail. So for me, that's the real root of this origin story. That again, I partnered with Pipeline with WAM Theater just before the close or the shutdown. And we had done Pipeline in the Berkshires, and we're taking our partnership to Boston when it got shut down. And that was, again, a really powerful experience. And Kristen and I and our teams at the time were able to really spend time taking care of artists of color, really taking care of the topic and theme, bringing it into schools. And so it was a very powerful, meaningful partnership for both of our teams. And then I was working on now what to do with all the equity work that we had been doing. I had finished some consulting work with the bar work at Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, and I was looking at my other clients in other sectors and wondering what next as far as equity work. How do we really deeply root that work? And we launched New Pathways and had these discussions in community. Some of them were on the arts, some of them were what do we do and how do we support our Black communities? We also had done this partnership with Jacob's Pillow, who's one of my long-term clients, and we had brought People's Institute for Survival and Beyond to the Berkshires, and all of Jacob's Pillow's staff and the Pittsfield community they were working with spent a weekend doing anti-racism work that was extremely powerful. And what I'm hoping you're getting from this is the work that happens over a long period of time. I can't get into all these slides. I'll share them afterwards so you can read all the details. But we have been at this work as a social justice organization and alongside and with the arts community in the Berkshires for quite some time. This anti-racism work and the pipeline work were the last things before we went into shutdown. And so what I was leading up to was this ILC, the Inclusive Leadership Cohort. This is where 12 arts organizations joined. We ended with 9, and we had an executive director and a board leader go through a deep dive in equity work, right? Again, to see what's next, how do we advance the needle for social change in our community. There were the arts organizations and there were other people, other sectors, large employers, funders, the community foundation who was hosting the bar work with the ABC grant. All of that came together, and with Emily, who I know is on this call, we were able to bring in experts to fill in the gaps around equity work after surveying our participants. And it was a powerful partnership. People still talk about the ILC like it's a secret. And our mission was, like I said, it was really to advance equity, right, across sectors. My partner here came from New York City, and she was my co-facilitator. These were some of the powerful speakers that we brought in, again, with the support of Berkshire Taconic Foundation and bar funding support. And let me see, these were some of the people that were partnered in that. You'll see some of the similar people that are in the pay equity. This is some more work about that. I want to get to this. So what we had done was, I'm trying to move ahead. What we had done was come up with 4 projects to come out of the ILC. So because the arts were there, one of the projects was about building a diverse community. Another one was racial equity audits for change. Another one was building race equity in the Berkshires through diverse and inclusive boards. The 4th one was create more inclusive and sustainable ticketing pricing. So these were the participants of ILC came up with projects, put their resources together, and you did these projects in the community. What we're talking about with you today is the Pay Equity Summit. That's the one that was an extra add-on. A lot of the arts, those institutions that Kristen mentioned got together, and they made a new group, found Aaron to consult, and started the project that they'll be talking about. Other ILC outcomes was the equity initiative, because Berkshire Taconic was not only stewarding the work, but doing the work on the inside. As I mentioned, the Creative Vitality Award through the Bar Foundation. My own organization increased its infrastructure and capacity to serve communities directly. And those were the projects that came out of it. And then since then, I just want to show you, I'm at 7 minutes. So like a picture here, I know Mass Mocha is here. So these are the project that's going right now is a Black Feminist Book Club at Mass Mocha. We just read We Refuse, and we're reading Imagination right now, and you're all invited. It's a really important book to be reading post-inauguration. We always partner on the Du Bois Legacy Festival. We have amazing speakers. We have the author Victoria Christopher Murray coming on February 23rd. And Tanglewood, we partnered with Conversations and Dialogues. And that's just a snapshot of the work and what I consider the long arc of social justice work in the arts in the Berkshires. And with that, I'm going to pass it along. I'll put in the chat a link to that presentation and our website. But that's it. Turn it over to Aaron.
That was amazing, Gwendolyn. Thank you for really laying the foundation for the Pay Equity Project and all that you do in the region. You really are responsible for a lot of the racial equity infrastructure. Also wanted to thank my co-lead for the project, Kristen. And in the house, we have one of our coalition members, Jacob's Pillow. Thank you to them, and to Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation, who's been, what would you call them, an angel investor, perhaps. My job is to present some of the data that we collected. Some of the most important data is why is this not working? Let's see if this works. Some of the most important data that we collected, I would say the most important data, is the voices of entry and mid-level workers themselves. And we wanted to share with you, I'm going to ask you in a second for a thumbs up if the sound is working, some direct excerpts from the open-ended survey we circulated and got over 180 responses. And we asked to entry and mid-level arts and culture workers themselves to read some findings for you today to kind of set the stage and put a human face on this problem that is extremely human and often invisible. And here we go, making it visible for just a couple minutes. No, that is not working, is it?
An education. I find it impossible to save, make plans for the future, or
Let's try that one more time. Believe it or not, we did test this before we started.
Can you share your screen as well, Erin?
Yeah, sure. Here we go there. Maybe I need to have more host privileges. I'm not sure why. Let's try it one more time. Can folks see my screen?
Yep,
Yeah,
that's
we can see it
perfect.
Okay,
now.
that's step one. Now tell me if you hear the sound. It was all crackly when I played it just now.
My life isn't sustainable. I get further and further behind in all ways: financial, social fabric, health, and education.
I find it impossible to save, make plans for the future, or even make ends meet.
The pay is too low and the workload is too high.
How does anyone make a living at this?
People don't understand that the cost of living is so high because they all own houses they've had for 20 plus years.
I love the arts and many members of regional communities, but the field is deeply inequitable and not sustainable for a working class person.
The Berkshires felt comparable cost-wise to living in a city, but required a car.
I'd love to stay in this field, but it's not possible if there aren't major changes in compensation.
It is not worth it in the arts anymore.
I rarely visit other art organizations because they are beyond my budget.
The revenue coming in for arts and culture is disproportionate to the wages and benefits of employees.
I can personally live on salary, but cannot create a family with it.
I have to rely on my partner to pay our bills, and that creates uneven pressure and strains our relationship.
Living expenses are not entirely met from my earnings, so other income from savings and family members is necessary to cover living expenses.
I do not feel valued monetarily for my contributions.
There is a cap on what I can make in my position, so there is no space for growth.
It's insane to work full-time and not be able to afford buying a house.
Even after 10 years, I have no retirement savings and I'm still paying off college debt. I have no safety net. I'm sacrificing financial stability along with my mental and physical health. This is not sustainable.
So again, folks, that's the most important data. These struggles and challenges are not unique to the Berkshire, Columbia County region. As arts and culture professionals yourselves, I'm sure you know the severity of the problem and how it persists in the shadows and how the entire sector depends on an artistic expression itself. Depends on the tireless work of entry and mid-level workers who are really at an existential level trying to survive. I want to share with you now some of the other data we collected in a more traditional fashion. First, you can use this QR code to download both the 2024 report that was recently released in September and our original one. We'll also put the link in the chat if you want to get them that way. So we only have time to give a quick snapshot of some of the data and analysis here. Our first seminal survey, like I said, had 188 responses, which represented 43 different employers and 33 different position titles. And just a quick overview of the findings from that. Respondents were diverse. Pay equity issues persisted well into mid and late career. 25 to 44 was the average age range. Respondents are highly educated and credentialed. More than a third are carrying debt, mostly student debt, but not entirely. 3/4 of respondents report unpaid overtime. Half of all respondents consider their pay and benefits unfair and expectations unreasonable. According to the MIT Living Wage Calculator, the average compensation on an hourly basis reported by our respondents it's just barely sufficient to constitute a living wage, assuming you have zero children and zero unemployed or dependent additional adults in the household. Once you introduce one or more of those, that average compensation becomes wildly insufficient. Now, over half of the respondents have additional jobs to get by. And in case you're thinking, well, that's just how people roll these days, right? The gig economy, people even prefer that kind of lifestyle. Well, we asked that question, and it turned out that three-quarters of respondents would prefer to have one full-time job. This was a really sobering sort of umbrella statistic here that overall more than 80% of respondents cannot imagine or are unsure about their future here. And here refers both to the region, thinking about migratory patterns during COVID and flight from cities, but also the sector, the arts and culture sector. Pretty sobering and scary stuff for us. So we didn't just describe, we wanted to prescribe, right? So that translates to establishing minimum pay rates, transparent salary bands, track compensation ratio, 5 to 1, highest to lowest paid employees, a common but not the only metric. Cola Plus, that's not an energy drink we discovered. It's the idea that cost of living adjustments need to happen every year. They need to be real. And in addition to that, merit increases have to be the rule, not the exception. Annual reviews to make sure job descriptions match what you're actually doing. Life experience versus degrees. I think many more institutions that say they, I should say, of the institutions that now say they value life experience, we wonder to what extent those life experiences really are being taken in consideration in the context of hiring, promotions, raises, etc. Equity-driven hiring process provides all types of opportunities to improve your pipeline, expanding benefits, especially for part-timers who are particularly vulnerable, engaging the board in this work, which we've had a lot of success doing, ongoing training, professional development, and beyond what individual employers can do, building this movement is really critical as well. So here again are some of those recommendations for employers. Eliminate those unpaid internships, that's low-hanging fruit. And moving to 2024 and how we wanted to update our findings and recommendations, we wanted to see if employers in our coalition and beyond were actually doing this stuff and how it's going. We didn't expect pay equity as a structural barrier to disappear in 12 months, but we were eager to see if there's some early signs to be optimistic about. We wanted to look at the worker experience directly. Again, this is not a traditional research project. We follow many of the principles of community-based participatory research to really include in meaningful ways entry and mid-level workers themselves. We wanted to find out what the employers are saying about what they've done as a secondary piece of data, and then continue to scan the national landscape to see what's going on, and then synthesize the work of individual employers into collective systems change. So the second time around, we had 51 respondents representing 46 different position titles, 27 different organizations. And 61% of respondents reported meaningful improvements. I won't read them here, but you can see they span a wide range, and this is pretty concrete stuff that, of course, this is not exhaustive and universal, but it's an interesting snapshot and reason to be hopeful. That has been our anecdotal experience, that folks are really happy to have a menu from which to choose concrete ways to increase pay equity. And these concrete changes do trickle up in a whole variety of ways. And we were really happy to hear some stories about how that happens. Morale, retention, organizational culture, productivity, and long-term savings that short-term expenditures might actually lead to. It's not a theory now, it's also data. Barriers remain. We have people talking about overtime not being paid and no breaks. That asterisk there is because if that's really happening, that is possibly illegal behavior. That's sort of our minimum threshold, right? Don't break the law. There's a lot of job insecurity out there still. A lot of reliance on contract workers rather than full-time workers, potentially in order to avoid insurance obligations. And of course, the structural barriers related to housing, healthcare, transportation. And so those ideas for improvement, again, combining coalition leaders and workers themselves, include that pooled health insurance idea, an equity assessment budget line for public and private funders to pay for not just the artistic production, but the kind of equity-centered infrastructure that is not just nice and intrinsically valuable, but probably necessary for the long-term sustainability of the sector. Folks have been talking about unionization. That can sometimes be a good thing, and sometimes it's an example of what happens when employers don't engage with entry-level, mid-level employees to robust discussion about pay equity. Employers reported having taken steps in just this past year. The improvements range from cash and COLA to benefits and transparency and PTO and working together on systems change. And on that note, it's almost as if the legislature in Boston was waiting for the Pay Equity Coalition to mobilize, because right before our last Pay Equity Summit, three important pieces of legislation emerged, including Workplace Equity Act, which requires published salary bands and salary reporting, cross-reference with demographic information. The Affordable Homes Act, specifically with a line item for the creative economy, and the governor's new Cultural Economy Advisory Council, which the coalition may be getting involved in. So we're really excited about where the coalition is going, both in terms of individual employer changes and movement building and employing our values and objectives internally and externally. Again, you can get the reports here, and I'll pass it to Kristen to wrap us up. Thank you, guys. You there, Kristen? I think you're on mute.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much, Aaron and Gwendolyn. And we're coming up to the Q&A, so hopefully there's a few comments or questions that we're certainly happy to answer. But before we do, just to conclude, is that we recognize that the narrative shift is essential for folks to understand that arts and culture is not just an extracurricular. We are the perfect region to be driving this, because the creative economy is an enormous part of the Berkshire economy at large. So the pilot pitch that we make when we're continuing this work is that if we can figure out how to do it here, then there will hopefully be the possibility of doing it elsewhere. And that doing this work actually is essential for the quality of the artistic expression in order for us to think about the pipeline and maintain the artistic quality that we have. We basically, I imagine most folks here agree, if we need to supplement our income to do this work, then low pay in the arts is a barrier to attracting and retaining that diverse workforce that is so essential to the stories that we tell and the art that we make. So as we sometimes say, as long as working in the arts is considered a privilege, then only the privileged are going to work in the arts. And when that happens, we really lose the richness in the thought and experience that diversity brings. And we perpetuate that perception that Gwendolyn shared with us from 2020, that arts is elitist. So ultimately, our first study revealed that this issue is bigger than any single organization. And our second study revealed that we have begun to change things together. And we see ourselves as a small part of a larger rising national conversation that we anticipate will only get larger as individual organizations, regional coalitions, and industry associations are taking on similar work. Change does seem daunting, but as other coalition members on this call can say, it is doable, and how can we afford not to? Our workers are at a breaking point, we're losing them, and passion is just simply no substitute for a living wage. So our commitments going forward, what a phase 3 could look like if we got substantial funding, is that we could dive into one of the main areas that has risen to the surface. For example, we're meeting with our state senator next Monday to pitch the idea to him that we could pilot something around health insurance that could then be whatever that we learn from that pilot could be used across the state. Is there a way to get creative communities, nonprofits, small businesses to all work together to create a new health insurance for all of us? Because that's something as small organizations that we really struggle with. It doesn't meet the needs of our staff and it costs us all a lot of money. So those are examples that if we got some earmark funding from the state senator, we could really dive into something like that, create a working group and begin to do a pilot like that. Regardless of the funding, we continue to be committed to implementing the pay equity practices within our organizations and doing what we can in our organizations to put into place the recommendations that were in both the 2023 and 2024 pay equity reports, because those have come directly from the workers. We continue to work to have them involved, the entry and mid-level workers, employees, have them involved with the work that we do in this organization. We continue to document our progress, do things like this. We continue to do board presentations. If you have an event or a board that you would like us to come and present at, we are committed to spreading this word and doing a 20-minute, 30-minute presentation. As Erin has shared, once the boards hear this information, things change. We have just recently heard multiple stories, one from a library who substantially changed what they were paying their staff with inspiration from the work that they heard at our summit. We also heard one of our coalition members, Berkshire Museum, had made sweeping changes in October in their pay, which has led to enormous retention, which helps us in the long run. So this is a long-term effort. We certainly don't dictate a single answer. It's not a competition. We're working to articulate a vision together about how pay equity for entry and mid-level workers is going to benefit everyone and benefit the whole sector. And we understand how this is relevant and helpful to other sectors. And we are excited to continue to gather the case studies and the articles and the information that can forward this work. So I believe, Richeline, we now have a few moments for some questions and comments. And I see, Rosemary, you put in, how do we propose this to the legislature? You're in SC, where's that?
Hi, I'm down here
South Carolina.
where it snowed. I can't believe it. But I was talking to some small organizations, and believe it or not, a lot of them, particularly in the South, Georgia, and other states, because they don't always have the expertise or the titles that, we call just regular titles in the art community, they do pay their volunteers because a lot of them could not function without volunteers. And I always pay my volunteers, not a big salary, but I give them a stipend. When I have interns, I make sure I pay them. Sometimes I'm restricted because they're on community service, but I've been wanting this for so long because some people are really, really committed to the arts. And a lot of people are retired and they just want something extra to do. They volunteer and they get nothing. I mean, not even parking sometimes. I always make sure I give parking validation stickers and I just take it out of my operational budget. Of course, I'm not a big organization, it's just me and um, I have a staff of about three, and I'm transitioning out as executive director to founding director. But
Wow, big news.
yeah, but I hope this would be something that I could help initiate, help with the legislation on it, talk to people, send out notices, whatever I could do, because
Mm.
they definitely, if we can do it for waitress, we can do it for the arts.
Mm.
Aaron, did you want to make a comment to
Yeah, I just want to say
respond?
thank you so much for your
Yes.
comment and specifically thinking about legislation, movement building, collective action, because solving this problem is not about like a bake sale to raise some money. That stuff is good to do, but we need some structural changes. There's some real basics that need to change in order to support the arts as employers and as a vital sector. I mean, I think we're all
Mm-hmm.
thinking about what to do now since the inauguration. And I think we need to understand arts workers as essential workers to remind us of the important ideas and themes that are necessary to change the world that we live in. And we can't tinker around the edges only. We need to think collectively about the kinds of changes to support this infrastructure and connecting community-based direct service organizations with advocacy and policy organizations, including the research and academic community, the media, etc. These are the kinds of coalitions and relationships that are so necessary to make change here. I love the focus.
And I want to also uplift the parking stickers you give and the creative ways. That was something when we did the inclusive leadership cohort, we had to do an equity audit
Yeah.
that Gwendolyn shared with us. And it made us think about things like, can you be flexible with when you give out your paycheck? Can you provide snacks? Can you have different ways, childcare, or we're artists, we think creatively. What are the low hanging fruit ways, like a parking sticker, that you can make people's lives easier, and encourage retention, and be more aware of how the struggles that folks are going through, and what are the ways that are easy for us that we can adjust that. So I want to uplift that. Any other sort of questions or comments before we throw it back?
I love that. Thank y'all so much for the presentation as well. What is there anything that you guys didn't touch on in terms of how folks who are in this space, who may be organization leader or individual artists who are looking to get involved, can do to continue push this in their own individual community as well as support your work out in the Berkshire?
Well, I would first say, like, that link that the Nonprofit Center of the Berkshires is our host for our videos and reports. There's executive summaries on the first 2 pages of both reports. So I think that's a great way to share with your boards, to share those videos, to share out the 2 page executive summaries, to reach out to Aaron or I. Obviously like, find ways to keep in touch with those of us that are doing the work. And like we mentioned, we're happy to come into your board. We're happy to share this information, because that was identified as one of the top 2 areas of misalignment. And it's just lack of knowledge. The board members have said over and over again, they genuinely usually have no idea what people are getting paid. And they're horrified when they realize what people are getting paid, and they become immediately committed to changing it. And so it's just being more transparent. And I think, as Aaron shared, sometimes you don't even necessarily have to have a plan. You just have to start talking about the fact that you're going to be looking into these things. And AJ, if I can sort of call you out, a story that I share often about Jacob's Pillow is that you took the time a few years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, but to look at each employee's job, pay history, salary, job responsibilities, and come up with an individual plan towards pay equity. And then you met with each person to discuss that and to come to some sort of alignment about how you would do it, when things could happen. And even if it wasn't happening for a few years, having that conversation with them and them knowing you were thinking about it really made them feel valued and seen. Am I capturing that correctly, AJ?
Yeah. Thanks, Kristen. Yeah, we really looked at it as a long-term process and established milestones what we could do organizationally along that timeline, and then took each annual increment and looked at how we could best affect, particularly those who are at the lower end of the pay scale, become uh, closer to their target compensation, and then continue to look holistically and globally at the organization as we move the whole process forward.
Yeah, thank you. And we have these very rich quarterly meetings as a coalition where we really focus on what folks are doing. For example, in our most recent meeting, people were talking about anybody who is making under 60,000 is getting a higher cost of living wage percentage than other folks based on kind of what is required as a living wage in our area, et cetera. So we really share ideas and implement things based on each other. Gwendolyn, you, and then Richeline, over back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Just to respond to Richeline's question, I think the whole point of my continually showing the origin story is how important it is to have organizations engaged in equity work, DEI work, belonging work, anti-racism work, because that, this work isn't always easy. The ILC was not a walk in the park. It was a very intense experience. Each organization and each individual in there had their learning points. And we designed it that way. Shanta and I designed it to bring people to the next level. So I can't stress enough how that foundational work is important, and the strategic work, the partnerships with community members that are impacted, just like, in the presentation that Aaron and Kristen have, they bring the voices of community. That, there's so many times where that's an oversight in organizing work and in campaign and advocacy work. And I do want to say, I think that all of these organizations that have been at this work for such a long time is a part of the recipe. So part of organizing in your community are those strategic partnerships. It's that training, it's that equity work ongoing. It's having a conversation of how white supremacy shows up in nonprofits, how it shows up in the arts, the privilege that Kristen mentioned earlier. All of that, I believe, is the recipe for why this has been so successful, right? Like, I think all of the whole journey was important, and then journey has to continue. As this cohort grows, we're in a conversation with the pay equity group about what about the new recruits that haven't gone through ILC or a similar process somewhere else? How do we bring them into the work? Because it gets harder, and it's going to be even harder now, frankly, after this election, right? And the orders that were even signed yesterday around conversations like equity. So I think it's really important that people think about that, strategize, develop relationships with the community, with the people that they're advocating for, with pay equity and all the other equity issues that are coming up. And so yeah, I wanted to circle back to that because I was rushing through my slides. I just think that was the whole point of sharing them, right? Is that this journey was what was really important and a recipe for the success that the Pay Equity Summit's having.
Thank you for that. And I also just want to flag again, like Gwendolyn and Aaron and Kristen all has put their slides, contact information, the link to the videos are all in the chat. So if you want to click on those and visit them later, please do. We will also be updating our website so that way that you have the recording of this session, this activist town hall, as well as some of the resources that was shared. I appreciate you all so much for your insight and for being here this afternoon. I'm going to give a quick little update from MASSCreative because we love putting together this Artivist town hall and having the conversation with leaders in your communities who are doing the work. As you all know, like this work is not done individually. It is a team effort and it is a collaborative effort from all across the sector. So we're thankful that we got to work with our peers in the Berkshire this month. And we're looking forward to the next month and the next group of partners that we're going to be working with. As you all know, we have sent out on some updates, organizing updates from Team MASSCreative. We have sent out we did send out an email last week letting you all know you could sign on to a sign-on letter that we were going to send out to the governor to ask for an increase in the mass cultural budget before like it's budget season. And every year it is a tough fight, but that doesn't mean it's not a fight worth fighting. So we're gonna keep you all updated with that. We also have announced that we're going to be doing Advocacy Week again fairly soon. It is literally a couple months away. It's going to be in April this year. Going to go from April 28th through May 2nd. So if you need more information on that, if you want to be there with us for Advocacy Day on April 30th at the State House, we still have spaces for sponsor. We're going to be sending out all of that information soon, so please keep an eye out. And of course, we also going to be doing Creative again this year. As you all know, Creative is my baby. I love it. It is my opportunity to bring the sector, our elected officials, and candidates who are running to the forefront of everyone who needs to know what's happening. So this year is no different like any other year. And this year, if anything, it's even more important to have Create the Vote be an active an active program, because we want to make sure that our elected officials and candidates who are running understand that this sector is one that has a significant impact in our Commonwealth, and that it is one that deserves to be invested in, to be valued. So please keep an eye out as we send more information. If you look in the chat, you will see more information about Advocacy Week. So please look into that, so that way you can figure out how to support us. Thank you all so much for being here. I know that we have about like 13 minutes left, so if anybody have any question for myself or our presenters, we'll take them. If not, I'm happy to give you some of your time back this afternoon, but we're really glad we got to share space with you all. All right,
I just want to
perfect.
shout out Emily for being here from Berkshire Taconic. We talked about how important they were to what we're doing, but you also make the time to come to these things, and it really makes a difference, Emily. So thank you.
Nice to see you all, and just so happy that you're getting the word out across the country about this.
And I see Kristen, who was one of our participants in the project, not just in responding, but in analyzing and interpreting and presenting the data. Kristen Grippo, thank you for being here.
I love that everybody's been here. Obviously, I don't know if you all know this, but AJ, who's here, is a board member at MASSCreative, and we're just very happy to have him. He's such a huge supporter of everything that we do. So the fact that we got to bring the team from the Berkshire here and who got AJ as the middleman, it's perfect.
And Kati, we would love to talk to anybody from Mass MoCA about this work. So please do reach out or let us know how we can connect with you and Mass MoCA. We would love to bring them into this conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, I believe there's someone else on the call from our team and people in culture. So I'll definitely have a chat, but everyone's invited to the Black Feminist Book Club. I'm actually the manager of membership here. So if anyone has questions about that, looking forward to hearing from you.
It's a powerful book, and it's a little bit of balm for the soul. On MLK Day, we closed out the evening doing a pre-book chat down here at Bridge, and it was pretty powerful. So, and it's an accessible read if you just pick up the book right now or listen to it on Audible. You don't need a ton of time. So please come.
Well, if no one else have any other resource to share or any other thoughts, I'm gonna give you guys 10 minutes back to yourselves. Thank you all again for being here, and we'll talk soon. So hopefully see you all in February for our activist town hall. Everyone have a good one and stay warm, please.
Yes,
Thank
stay warm.
you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
Thanks,
so
you.
everybody.
much.
Good to see all the Berkshire friends. Hi, Igor. Thank you.